Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Films Not Movies podcast with me, Arron.
And me, Charlotte.
This episode, we are going to do our top 5 films each of 2017. Hurrah!
That's right. And if you listen to the one that we did of last year, we're going to do it in the same format. So it's literally our own individual 5 picks.
Yes, so there are things that we haven't seen at the cinema this year or not seen at all. So if some of your favourites aren't in there, it might be that we just didn't like them that much or we didn't see them.
That's true. And so neither of us knows what the other has put in their top 5. Right. But we have both just been debating how hard it's been to just pick 5 this year.
We've had a good year because I think there's been a lot of good films this year, and also we've seen probably more than we usually would because of wanting to doing the podcast and things coming out on demand a lot quicker. So you still get, if you miss something at the cinema, you might still catch up with it that year. Yeah. So it's been a big list, and I'm not 100% sure about my own picks.
No, I'm not, and I've really agonised over it, and there's some ones that I really feel should be in the top 5 that aren't in the top 5 because I've just had to pick 5 only. So yeah, it's been really tricky.
It has, but I've enjoyed it.
Yes.
But I still feel like I might change my mind at the last time.
Once we commit it to recording, that's it now.
Okay.
No going back.
I'm going to chuck you in at the deep end then.
Ooh.
You say your number 5 first, and let's see if it matches up with mine.
Okay. Number 5, I have put Dunkirk.
Dunkirk at number 5. Okay, that's not my number 5.
I really ummed and ahed about... I've got a kind of hardcore of my top 3, which weren't going to change.
Okay.
But then 4 and 5 positions, particularly number 5, I've swapped about 3 films in and out. And whereas some films have a more kind of warm and fuzzy glow to them and make me feel like I would like to watch that again now when you kind of look back more fondly on it. I think at first I was thinking about Dunkirk as, well, what it is, which is a war movie and not an easy watch, and, you know, it's not colourful and, you know, it's kind of, you just have this vision of a monotone war in your head when I look back and think about it. But then I really thought about it and what happened in it and the moments and the individual people and how it made me feel, and the way that they approached it, which we talked about at the time, which is kind of not having one big beefcake hero with a sweetheart at home and, you know, really Hollywoodizing it. So yeah, I decided to give that the slot over some others, which are also very well deserving.
Very interesting. Well, yeah, I'm not surprised. I don't really know what to say. I'll just say mine because mine is not Dunkirk. Yours. Okay, my number 5 is Star Wars The Last Jedi. It makes it into the top 5. We haven't talked about it on the podcast yet, but will be on a future spoilerific episode.
Yes.
Because it's only just come out and we've not had time to do an episode. So, but I really enjoyed it. I won't do any spoilers now, but I just thought it was a really interesting new direction for Star Wars to go on. I really liked The Force Awakens, but it was very formulaic, and I thought it was just covering the same bases as the old films. Still really enjoyed it. Whereas this one, it seemed to do more interesting stuff. The story arcs are really interesting. It went to places it didn't seem. It had some of the most amazing scenes from any Star Wars film ever. I've seen it 3 times because I'm a total Star Wars dweeb. Really want to see it a few more times. Give it a bit more time to breathe, perhaps, rather than 3 times in 5 days, or however I first saw it. There are some iffy bits, which is why it's gone down to 5. There's some bits I'm not perfectly happy with, but overall, really liked it. So that's my number 5.
Well, it is in there for me.
Oh, higher than 5. Oh, I thought it might not make it in for you. Okay. Do you want to do 4 or should I go 4? Should we swap positions as we go along?
Okay, you do your 4.
Okay, well, straight off the back of yours, number 4 for me is Dunkirk. I kind of thought it should have been higher, and then it almost dropped out of my top 5.
Yeah, I had it not in at all for a bit.
For the same reason as you, how it made me feel at the time made me put it in, because I felt it was really rousing and really stunning and stuff, but it has left me a little cold in hindsight. I don't feel a lot of reasons to revisit it.
Yeah, I feel the same, but I think that's because it seems like a long time ago since we watched it, and some things seem really fresh and burning in my mind, which that isn't.
But it wasn't that long ago. It was only the end of summer that it came out.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like we've watched a lot of really good films since then.
So 4 for me. But yeah, as I said, I've really struggled with this list. But yeah, we've talked loads about Dunkirk, so yeah, that'll do for that.
Cool. Well, number 4, I think, is something which is not going to make your top 5 at all. Okay. Do you want to guess?
Oh, it would only be the film that I haven't seen, would be my guess.
Ah, well, you're wrong.
Okay, let me think. So something that
We've both seen
we've
it.
both seen, and you don't think
I liked it more than you did.
The Love Witch.
Yes!
I thought you might put it in there. I'm surprised it made your top 5, though.
Yeah, I didn't really hesitate about this one, really.
Excellent.
I ummed and ahed about where to put it, because putting it above Dunkirk seems insane. But also it doesn't in my head, because
You enjoyed it more.
really enjoyed it. I thought it was so refreshingly different, and I had a real sort of gleeful enjoyment of it. I enjoyed every moment of it, just the look of it, the hilariousness of the characters and situations, and just the popping colours, and I just thought it was brilliant. And we had some good conversations about it afterwards, and
I think we covered it really well in the episode where we talked about it as well. So The Love Witch is I think the director's called Anna Biller, and it stars, I think she's called Samantha Robinson. Does that sound right?
You've got a good memory. I've got no idea.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a B-movie witchcraft film.
Yeah, it's almost like Bewitched, or
Bewitched,
or I Dream of Jeannie, sort of made into a film, but with lots of a bit of gore thrown in, and
garish colour schemes.
Really garish, gory, crazy.
I liked it, but it was so out there that it did put me off it a bit.
That's
by
why
the end.
I liked it so much. It's
I
completely
liked it.
different
Great.
to everything else.
It is, and that makes it a good pick. When I was going through the films of the year, I kind of forgot that we'd watched it this year. I was like, I did really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't sniffing around my top 5, you were right with that, but it was definitely one I appreciated at the time. So that was your number
4.
Okay, you do your number 3 then.
Okay, well, my number 3
Is
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Have you got anything more to add to it than what I said?
Well, I've only seen it the once, whereas
Yes.
you've seen it 3 times, so maybe I will like it more, maybe I will like it less. I don't know. But obviously we're going to do a full review of this, but I just thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. I loved the twists and turns in it. I didn't see it coming. I had no idea of where the plot was going to go in this film. Well, some lines maybe you could kind of tell, but I just thought it was fantastic, and I really liked the wackiness of it, and some of the bits which are kind of a bit rubbish I also really liked at the same time. I just kind of embrace the whole thing and just go with it, because I'm a big fan of kind of 80s fantasy films, of the kind of, I don't know, Dark Crystal, Legend, Princess Bride, and those kind of adventure things where there's weird monsters and bizarreness happens, and you just embrace it, and it really felt like a sort of proper kids fantasy film, whilst also having those other elements which were really awesome as well. But it just kind of took me back to that. Yeah,
I mean, I agree with all of that. I mean, didn't grow up as much as a fantasy film fan as you, but I still think Star Wars does technically fall into fantasy rather than the sci-fi category overall anyway. But for it to bring in more of those elements than the classic sci-fi space battle, I mean, there's tons of that as well.
Yeah.
But for it to touch on that other side of things, and I think that was helped by it being an extended running time, and maybe that's more the style of the director Rian Johnson. I mean, it doesn't come through in anything he's done previously, but if that's the side of things that he's gone with, then it makes perfect sense. And I think it's a real triumph where it could have fallen flat as a sequel to the Force Awakens, which was so kind of well received.
Yeah, but didn't take any risks.
Yeah.
Whereas this took loads, and it totally paid off in my mind.
Yeah, agreed. So that was your number 3.
Yep.
So my number 3, maybe somewhat controversially that it's not higher, is Moonlight. Barry Jenkins directed film that we absolutely loved, and at the time I was absolutely blown away with it. We gave it 5 stars each in our reviews. The only film we've ever given 5 stars, so kind of funny that I've not put it top of the list. But I think just because I don't think it's got that replayability, I don't think the second time it would have the emotional impact of the first time, because you kind of know where the direction the film's going to go in, is why it's not, despite it being my highest rated film of the year, isn't going to be my number 1, because it just isn't my personal favourite. But I think it was
I know what you mean.
well worthy of winning the Best Picture Oscar. It's actually really refreshing to have something that actually takes a lot of risks, it being a film about a coming of age gay black man's story, which sounds so earnest, but it isn't. It does it in such a personable way, if that makes sense. You totally just buy into the story straight away, and his whole arc of growing up. And I mean, the film looks great, the acting's amazing, the music's really interesting.
Yeah.
It does a lot of great things, so it would have been harsh for me to not put it in my top 5, and I think 3 is about the right place for me.
Well, I've just gone one higher than you.
Oh, okay.
So it's my number 2.
Your number 2. Excellent.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I don't look back at it with a kind of warm, fuzzy feeling. But I kind of really appreciate that about the film as well, because it could have been massively over-sentimentalised, and it wasn't. And I really liked that. And at the time, I remember thinking about it a lot. And I kind of would like to rewatch it again. And I feel like knowing the outcome, you would kind of watch it differently the second time, which isn't necessarily going to spoil it, but you just kind of look for that extra dimension in it. All the acting in it is amazing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Number 2. What is yours?
Number 2. Now, I think my number 2 is going to be one that isn't in your list at all.
I think you're probably right.
You're very confident of that. So, against all the odds, because of me not really being a huge fan of the genre in general...
I wondered whether you might have put that at number 1.
Number 2 is Logan.
Ah, okay. Ooh.
I'm not a huge superhero.
Thought you were going to completely say something else then.
Yeah, well, I don't know what you thought I was going to say. I'm not a huge superhero film fan in general. I like the good ones, but there's a lot churned out these days. I find them a bit formulaic.
Yeah.
This one doesn't do that. I think it's just a really great... It's kind of like a film noir, western... It's the superhero side of it is just applied to just a really good film, and
the superhero-ness is almost on the side. Really, it's not really key.
Yeah, and people talk about it in a good way because of the gore factor and the increased violence compared to a more family friendly. Because this is just about the most violent superhero film, but I don't think it's that makes it stand out for me. I think that makes it seem more adult, but then the themes throughout it are more adult.
Definitely.
And I think that about basically two men getting old together and struggling through the last parts of the phases of their lives, looking after each other essentially, while still trying to harness these crazy abilities, and then the kind of surrogate father figure that Logan has to pay to the little girl throughout the film is just really fantastically done. And it's one of those films that I really enjoyed it at the time, really enjoyed talking about it, and then it's out of the ones that I've picked, it's probably quite close to the one that I would enjoy to watch again the most.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that whenever someone mentions Logan, I always think, oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
I always want to talk about it, so I think for me that's why it's up there.
Yeah. I remember you gave it a 5, didn't you, out of
4.
5? Did you give it a 4?
Did
I only give it a 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's because I was not as close to the X-Men series at the time. Now, obviously, you know these characters from, whether it be from the cartoons or whatever phase of the X-Men you've watched, but we kind of fell out of watching some of the X-Men films. So I just felt like, I almost felt like it wasn't my film, like I'd just dropped in for that one. And it's quite an emotional film. I almost felt like I wanted to have been on the run-up journey a little bit more to get more out of it, which you don't necessarily need to do because it's just a great film. But I felt like it was the end part of something that I hadn't seen the rest of, which is sort of taken away from it a little bit. Perhaps unnecessarily, because you've just taken it for what it is and loved it, which I did also think it was fantastic. But I don't know, I felt a bit like a bit of an imposter watching it and liking it as much as I did without having been on the full journey with them.
Not feeling fully invested in it.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I do feel kind of similar, but in a good way, that it doesn't leave you with too many in storylines that you would need to know going into it. There's no... You can easily just watch this one on its own.
Yeah. Maybe it's just that I feel like I would have got more out of it
perhaps
if I had been a die-hard X-Men film fan all throughout the franchise, rather than losing interest a little bit, which we did.
Yeah.
But we obviously heard such good things about Logan, decided it was worth watching. It most definitely was. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I echo that sentiment almost completely. But they're the reasons why it works so well, is that you can throw everything else out the window and it still holds up on its own.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great testament, because there's not many series films or films that are plopped right in some part of the story arc that goes over many films that you can just say, you know what, that just completely stands up on its own. So that's why it's so ridiculously high in my list of 5.
Fantastic.
And a great film.
Now the number one.
Oh, number 1. So how we normally do this is, well, how we did it last year was a 3, 2, 1 countdown and say the name of your number 1.
And
now last year we pretty sure it was going to be the same.
Yeah.
This year,
100% sure it's not going to be the same.
100% sure it's not going to be the same, which makes me a bit disappointed that my number 1 isn't in your top 5.
Well, don't look at me like that. I've told you I had to leave you some big uns out, and I have.
You're wrong. Okay.
Are we still going to do it the same way?
Yeah, because it'll be funny.
Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
The
Blade Runner
Handmaiden.
2049. So it's quite hard to say that when someone else is speaking. Yes, well, I'm really, really glad actually that you've picked The Handmaiden, because I wanted to put it in there.
And I also wanted to put Blade Runner in there.
Yeah. It just kept getting pushed further and further down the list for me, The Handmaiden. We might as well talk about it together. Because it was a film that I absolutely loved this year.
Yeah.
I think there was a few little twists in the story, even though it totally pulls the rug out from under you, thinking you know exactly what's going on with this film, and then it isn't. But I think looking back, because I think some of it was just a little bit, cheesy's not the word, and predictable's not the word, but it's just some
of the characters were a little bit tropish.
Yeah.
Like the baddie is a little bit cackling, moustache twizzling baddie-ish.
Yeah.
But only at times. But when I think back on the film, that's not really what I think about. I think about the lead actresses and the stunning settings and the fantastic plot that completely, all the twists and turns, absolutely loved it. Yeah, it just really stands out for me. I just really loved it. I loved the end. Maybe it's a bit more of a girl power film that
perhaps
resonated better with me. I don't know, but definitely go and see it if you haven't.
Yeah, I mean, another one it had a really great soundtrack, I thought. I was really glad that we made the effort of seeking it out, because it was on a somewhat limited release, being a South Korean film, which is a country where loads of great films seem to be coming from at the moment. But yeah, as you say, the performances were great. It had that. I was the same director as Old Boy. I just can't remember his name. Park
Chun-wook or
something like that. Apologies. So it has that kind of some of his old sensibilities of some of his extreme violence, but toned down quite a lot in terms of it not being all the way through. But then you still have those like flashes of horror that make it really is his signature of filmmaking these days. And it's just so stylish, and the sets are all amazing. It's filmed so just meticulous, I think is the word that comes to mind. But it still feels like a personal story.
It does. It's got real emotion and depth to it, despite it looking visually stunning as well. And it's quite touching, but also just the twists in it, to completely change your mind about characters and see everything completely differently. I'm not going to say anything more, but really watch it. It's a fantastic film. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so were you completely sold from the start on The Handmaiden being your number 1? Did you know, bang, that's the number 1?
I knew it was going to be in there. And then as I compared it to everything else going along, I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to put it number 1.
Well, this is exactly the same process of elimination I've had with mine, is that I knew Blade Runner 2049 was going to be in there, and I'm still not even sure it is my favourite film of the year. But when I compared it against the ones that I wanted to put in the top 5, it's definitely the one I enjoyed the most, because it was such an immersive experience.
Yeah.
I felt totally swept away into the world of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Denis Villeneuve, one of his main characteristics as a filmmaker is how good he is with the visuals, how good he is with world building, and how good he is at making the kind of vistas and everything look otherworldly, but also massively convincing. There's this kind of a real life element to it. It's not just all completely CG.
Yeah.
Even if it is all CG, it doesn't look all CG, which I think is fantastic. I think Ryan Gosling was always going to be a bit of a interesting choice because he can be a little bit humorless and a little bit lacking of personality, I think, sometimes in some of his roles.
Yeah.
But that fit him being a replicant, which isn't a spoiler because you find that out straight away, in the film perfectly. It's like, well, that makes complete sense. I think there was a really interesting dynamic between him and Joy, his kind of girlfriend, in it. I think they had a bizarre relationship, seeing as it was a non-human
she's
relationship.
like an AI, isn't she?
He's like a robot, but she's even less human than him. I thought that was a really interesting place to explore.
We had some good conversations about sort of levels of humanity and...
And I think that was interesting. I think the story did the original justice, because I love the original Blade Runner, which is so ambiguous. This is a little less ambiguous, a little bit more of a straightforward story. But even though it's long, but I appreciate the longness because it really lets scenes sink in and different visuals sink in, whereas other films wouldn't be brave enough to take that choice. They would just keep the pace of the film moving quickly, cutting between scenes. It wasn't perfect. There was, as I've said in the main review, there was some performances I wasn't too keen on. Jared Leto, I thought his role was a little weak. So that's why it was a tough year. There wasn't, not like last year where Room was the absolute outstanding candidate. I knew straight away it was going to be that. It was a tough decision, but yeah, probably the film that I like the most last year. But you can see that it is close.
It was in my top 5 for quite a while, and when I was looking over the list, I was like, well, that's obviously in the top 5. And then the more I really thought about some of the others, I thought, it just sort of got nudged for me.
Yeah, these things happen to mine as well.
And I feel bad for not putting it in because I absolutely loved it, and it probably would be my number 6 / joint 5th for me.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like this year that we've gone for separate things, and I'm glad that The Handmaiden has come in, because that would have been in my notable mentions section, which we're going to look on to now. But it's nice for us to be able to cover it properly as your number 1. And yeah, I don't think I realised you liked it quite as much as that, but it's great that you did.
Yeah.
Cool. So a quick recap of the top 5s. So mine was 5, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Number 4, Dunkirk. Number 3, Moonlight. Number 2, Logan. And number 1, Blade Runner 2049.
Cool. And mine was 5, Dunkirk. 4, The Love Witch. 3, Star Wars Last Jedi. 2, Moonlight. And 1, The Handmaiden. So
you've got a really good kind of eclectic mix there. You sound like a real film buff with that list. Yeah, we all know that's a lie. Great. So we're going to look at some noticeable omissions.
Yes.
Notable omissions? Yeah, that's what I mean. Because there's been too many good films this year. It's been annoying. Yeah. But again, there hasn't been like 1 or 2 absolute yes. There's been, for me, there was about 9 that if I'd woken up on the other side of the bed, the list could have been almost completely different. It
would have been much easier to do a top 10, because I could have filled a top 10 quite easily.
I know, but I think if I'd done a top 10, I would have then...
Still agonised over the top 5.
Well, no, there would have been outside choices that were like, well, that probably is in the top. So that would have been like, I probably would have thought of 14 films that I would have wanted in my top 10.
I thought you might have put La La Land in there, you big mushy.
Oh, this was the great debate.
That wasn't even the running for me.
I know, because you're lame. But La La Land, Ryan Gosling again. Maybe it's just a man crush, but I really love La La Land. I kind of discounted it as not this year because it was right at the start. I had to check when it came out. UK release date was the 12th of Jan, so as early as it can, but we go off UK cinematic release dates just so we know what year to put films in. I loved La La Land. Really good, fun. I think it just made an old school type of film, a musical, modern and up to date with good songs and well directed, which it's almost an impossible task really to get it right. So for it to get it to do it as well as they did, I think it was a real triumph.
I never warmed to it as much as you did.
No.
I know that I've got this thing with films where if something turns me off at the beginning, I find it hard to warm back up to it, and I really didn't like that sort of opening number, dancing around the cars.
Yeah, I mean, that, to be fair, that was probably the weakest bit of the whole film for me, was that opening song.
And I didn't really like the girls dancing around the bedroom, getting ready to go out, and I don't know, there was just lots of bits that kind of were a bit for me. Whereas I might enjoy it again on a second watch because I really loved the way that it went at the end. For me, that really massively redeemed it. And not going to say what happens, but I think I might appreciate it more knowing that's what it does.
I'd say give it another go, because I'm not saying it's going to suddenly break into your top 5 if you don't. I mean, it's not made the cut for me in the end, but I did really appreciate it.
So what else was a near miss for you?
Get Out.
Yeah, I had that in number 5 for a bit.
It was actually quite high up my list for a while, and then that's just like...
My number 5, things were going in and out like a yo-yo.
I think because it hasn't really stood the test of time in my mind. It was a film that felt very much of the moment. It was really tapping into kind of social anxieties of the time, I think is what I mean. And it also being fresh, interesting casting choices. It's a horror film that is also a social commentary. I think social commentary is what I was trying to say.
And it was gripping, and we talked about it loads afterwards. And it's another one of those where you don't know where it's going to go right until the very end. Yeah. So yeah, I did love it, and that was definitely in there for a while. I also nearly put The Florida Project in my top 5, which you haven't seen.
I haven't seen, and we haven't talked about on the podcast at all. So I've heard good things about it, but I haven't seen it.
This is one of the films that I've seen the most recently, so it seems really fresh in my mind. And there's a lot more of although it's got darkness to it, it's kind of got a warm glow around it in my mind, and that made it kind of tempting to put in there over something like Dunkirk, because it's probably going to be, it would be a more enjoyable rewatch than something like Dunkirk. So I kind of, when I was just sort of letting that warm glow lead the decision, that made me want to put that in. And then I kind of really rethought about how Dunkirk made me feel when I was watching it, and Blade Runner as well. I really, really enjoyed it, but I've not really thought about it that much recently. Like when I think back about it, I'm not getting an overwhelming, I don't know, it's just not impacting me as much as some of the others in my memory.
No, it makes sense. Do you have any others on your noticeable omissions?
Well, these weren't probably going to be ever in the top 5, but I do feel like I want to mention both The Ghoul and Prevenge, which I'm kind of lumping together in the Alice Lowe realm. Yeah,
Brit horror drama, somewhat black comedy, black
dark
comedy.
Well, The Ghoul's not really black comedy, but it's definitely dark.
Yeah, low budget, great films. We definitely talked about Prevenge. Did we talk about The Ghoul in the end of the podcast? I don't think we did, unfortunately. It would be a nice one to cover at some point. Perhaps we'll do.
It's really good.
Perhaps we'll do like a top 10 films you might not have seen at some point, because I think that would come quite high up the list because it was a small release. But yeah, a really good film for me. I think honestly it affected me so much mentally, because it is like a rabbit hole that the lead character falls down in his life, and emotionally it felt so much like something that could happen. It's just a little bit tough for me to even think about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's not one that I'm bursting to rewatch because it's hard to watch. Yeah. But superb performance by the lead guy. I also want to give a mention to Okja as well, which I did. Oh, okay. I almost thought about putting in just because it made me blub like no other film has made me blub.
Yeah. I liked Okja, I think.
But then I think as a film, it's not as good.
No.
It was just very affecting.
Very affecting, but there were some weird performance choices, and it was kind of it was strange for it to take on the subject matter of kind of the morality of eating meat and growing meat. And this is the Netflix original film Okja, which is basically about that subject matter, essentially growing animals to eat rather than natural ones, and the morality of that. But it had so many weird comedic turns in it that I found it a bit jarring. And didn't quite make. I mean,
it was clear that it wasn't one of the best films, but it definitely was one of the most affecting films for me.
Yeah. Well, a couple more quick ones, noticeable. You can see how many that I liked it. Raw.
Yes.
What?
That is superb.
A visceral, visual hellfest, but is also great fun to watch. But essentially,
you're kind of watching behind a cushion a lot of the time.
Essentially, a vegetarian turning to cannibalism in just but some of the most not cringy, but just kind of hide behind a cushion, but not horror, not really like someone being butchered. Yeah, kind of horrific.
Yeah,
really fascinatingly made film. Really glad that things like that make the light of day because it is really good. And that was pretty close to making the top 5 for me, actually. It really stuck with me. And then the other one is probably the film I've had the most fun in the cinema watching this year, which is Free Fire, the Ben Wheatley film. Really loved it. I think it was a little flabby in the middle section. It probably could have been a bit shorter. And then obviously it's such a one premise film that it's hard for it to kind of stand up as... Because basically it's just people shooting at each other for an hour and a half. Had to be mentioned because I enjoyed it. It's probably the most fun I've had in the cinema this year. Cool. Have you got any other to mention?
That's
great.
They were my faves. Manchester by the Sea is also an excellent film.
It was.
But, I mean, that is how good these films have been, really. There's been
loads.
That didn't even really make my honourable mention.
There's probably 5 others. But
yeah.
The Big Sick was good. I really liked Colossal. I know you didn't see it. That was an interesting little film.
I would have liked to watch that.
It was nowhere near the top, but it was really interesting. Even Second Train Spotting was good fun.
Yeah.
And could have been bad, but was great. So...
Yeah, great year for films.
Great, yeah, a really great year. So we calculated the films that have released this year. We've seen roughly 25 each. I think I've seen 25 and you've seen 24.
Okay.
So that's pretty good going for a year. Obviously, we don't see everything, so if something hasn't been mentioned at all, it's probably because we haven't seen it. Or we're going to mention it now in the top tripe section. We haven't done a top 5 because, to be honest, I haven't seen many bad films this year.
No, and you've got to think, we fork out to go to the cinema, so we're going to go and see the ones that appeal to us most. Yeah. As much fun as it would be to review some absolute awful films and rip into them the way that some film critics do.
Something like Geostorm would have been good fun, but I even considered going to see that, but it didn't come around to it. So for me, the biggest disappointment of the year, not the worst film that I've seen this year, the biggest disappointment was Alien Covenant.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it makes me angry, that film.
I like this more than you.
How it was half of a really excellent alien, just straight down your throat horror with the aliens bounding around the ship, ripping people to pieces. That side of stuff was done well. The storyline of the characters was utter trash. One of the pathetic, most badly thought out things.
I think hindsight has made you hate this film even more.
Shredding the legacy at every turn of Alien and Aliens, which is a series which has fallen apart for the last few years anyway. But this one really looked like it could have gone somewhere. For it to be probably worse than Prometheus is a pathetic effort. So, obviously some amazing parts of it, and I think I gave it 2 stars in the end because the bits that were really good with fantastic alien films, but it just makes me angry. I
think I wasn't watching it as an alien film. I was kind of watching it as a follow-up to Prometheus, almost as its own thing.
I'm just sighing at the thought of it. They've been a bit weak there, because then just call it Prometheus 2.
Yeah, I know, fair enough, but yeah.
They've kind of wanted to reel back in the Alien fans, moving it away from Prometheus, but then just made it a weird Prometheus sequel. Yeah, not good enough, basically. Just not good enough.
Maybe I didn't have as high hopes for it as you did, because it's not up there with my top disappointments. And the 2 that I've put down for that, ones that I was looking forward to, and then let me down.
One of these has got to be the same. Maybe both of them.
One is The Circle, which the trailer looked so good.
Yeah, it's the Emma Watson, Tom Hanks vehicle, which kind of looks like a dystopian look on social media and the impact.
It was like from being inside of a Google type, Google-alike business, but then I don't know, it must have been dropped by the studio and bought by Netflix and turned in a different direction. I think Google made them change it, but I think that's wrong. Just because they didn't touch on any of all the amazing scary stuff that they could have touched on about data and privacy and rights, and it just went completely off the wall. Chase scenes, just drivel, rubbish, crap acting.
Totally phoned in performances by everyone in it. It was just trash. Absolute poo. One of the worst films I've seen in a long time. No, I haven't that much more to say about that.
And the other one, I think because I was really looking forward to this, is Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, okay. That's not my other one. I thought it was going to be.
Because I think we'd got really into Blade Runner, and we've just been to Tokyo, and, you know, we watched all these making of Blade Runners, and we watched the original Ghost in the Shell anime. And I think when we first saw the trailer for Ghost in the Shell, it looked pretty good. We were really looking forward to it. And, you know, we are completely the target market for it. And maybe it's because we saw it so much later. You know, we didn't see it at the cinema. But it just looked crap.
Yeah.
You know, that film should have been visually amazing, and it looked like...
PlayStation game.
Yeah, somebody just whipped it up on the home computer. I mean, obviously that's doing it a disservice, but it
didn't look good enough, did it?
No, it should have been super glossy, futuristic, stunning, and the plot wasn't enough.
No, the plot.
It just lacked.
Yeah.
Throughout, it was just a lesser version of what it could have been.
The plot was a shame because it kind of took exactly the same approach as the original story from Ghost in the Shell, but then just kind of really watered it down and just did a few, like, Hollywoodized it too much instead of leaving the ambiguity of the original in there.
Yeah,
so.
And obviously the heart of it is, again, an android type character, which is not the most endearing character to warm to, but, you know, that is what it's about, a bit like Blade Runner. But whereas Blade Runner was awesome, this was really not.
Cool. Well,
what's your other?
This is harsh because it wasn't bad. So this is me caveating that from the start, that I don't think that the film was bad, but I just do not understand the universal praise for it, and that is Baby Driver. I enjoyed it. It was a throwaway, good enough hour and a half entertainment, but with some really cheesy bits. I know there's syncopated Edgar Wright, everything's in time with the music, and it's all must be really hard to do, but it doesn't make it actually interesting to watch.
No.
And
I mean, it's really just what a lot of people do when they're walking around the kitchen tapping on things with a pen.
And the thing is, people seem to love him, Ansel Elgort, and him singing along with stuff, and it was just making me cringe. It had the same effect that Chris Pratt dancing around at the start of Guardians of the Galaxy does. It just makes me want to hide behind a cushion. It's so cringy to watch.
It's just like sort of Hollywood assumes you're immediately going to fall for these kind of fair-haired, handsome-ish guys who are a bit Jack the Laddie, or that's not the right word, but you know what I mean? That's like, this is the hero, he's a bit quirky, he's a bit funny, and you're going to love him in this 30 seconds, go, fall in love. And then that makes me go, I find you a bit gross, actually, in a kind of, oh, really kind of way. And then I can't get back on board, like I'm already lost.
It's a shame because there was some really good, really exciting scenes in it, and some of it was really well done, which is why I certainly wouldn't put it as a bad film, not even close. It was really good.
It's very watchable.
Really good in some ways, but the universal praise for it, you know, when you just start looking at yourself, like, did I fall asleep for some of that? Have I watched the wrong film?
My main beef with this film was the paint-by-numbers baddies. There's a sexy Latina, and there's a handsome Brit, and then there's a thick black beefcake guy who doesn't eat Hulk smash. And it was just like,
And the thing
rubbish.
is with this, Edgar Wright's done this before. When he did Scott Pilgrim Against the World, he did some very dodgy caricature bad
racial
guys.
Stereotypes, which were awful.
And people just seem to lap it up, but I find it a little...
It's like, because it's framed, it's all wrapped up in a quirky package that's a bit indie filmy. People seem to think that it's okay, but it's not okay.
Yeah, so not good enough, but not in any way a bad film. So
we're just not falling at its feet like some people.
So for some reason we've done it in the order where we're ending with the things that we dislike the most, but a really excellent...
It's really fun to rip into
films,
though. We don't do it all that often.
A funny place to end it, though. But yeah, a really excellent year for films. There are some that I'm definitely want to catch up on from this year, which may change our opinion, but looking forward to another big year of films coming up.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I think that's about it.
Thanks for listening.
Next time...
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year and all that. Next time we'll be doing a Star Wars The Last Jedi spoiler special.
Yep.
So, maybe only listen to that if you've seen it, because I think we're just going to rip straight into the spoilers.
Yeah.
Because it'll be fun.
Because we want to talk about it in detail.
Awesome. All right. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.